Okay. And apparently that worked, I think. I have. Yep. Cool. And damn it. And now I. Oh my dog. What? There we go. Holy hand grenade of Antioch people. Alright. After all that. Okay. Are you kidding me? Can you tell I'm having one of them nights tonight? I swear it's Trump's fault all over again. You know what? Don't care. Alright. You come back. Okay. Where was I? Right. But yeah, blue is not completely unreasonable. It's going to be a little on the difficult side, but it's not completely unreasonable. It's not completely unreasonable to have some kind of reanimation-y thing going on with blue. Wayfaring Giant, this is going to be, at best, this is going to be a 6 mana 6/8. Now, to pull that off, realistically, A, you need to play green. B, you're going to want some way of shrinking down its cost. Like Stink Drinker Daredevil. It's a giant. It is not completely unreasonable if you can get the giant or the Daredevil out. This then becomes a 4 mana 6/8. The problem is, it's again at best a 6/8, which isn't bad, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't have trample, it doesn't have flying, it doesn't have first strike. It's just big. Okay, see ya, Holly. Oh yeah, Squiggly, don't forget the biggest problem with Hummered Spawning Bed is it's going to be based on the creature's mana value. That being said, if you have Thought Monitor, which I'll pull back up now that I've got rid of the card for now. Few have Thought Monitor. Actually, no. Sorry, not Thought Monitor. Few have Null Drifter. It has Evoke. In response to the Evoke trigger, you can sacrifice the Null Drifter. You end up spending 6 mana. You draw 2 cards and you get 7/1/1s. Which is not terrible bad, especially when you start adding cards like Sunken City, which instead of having 7/1/1s, I have 7/2/2s. Anything of that nature at all, suddenly it ends up becoming really good. Wayfaring Giant, realistically, it's going to be a basically big vanilla creature, and that's it. So far, I would play Spirit Weaver before. I would play Spirit Weaver before Wayfaring Giant, but I'd play that before like these other 3. So I would probably take these 3, slide them down a notch, put this over here, and bring the Spirit Weaver at the start of the second row. Thus far. Benelash Lancer. Benelash Lancer doesn't look exciting. Keep in mind, I think at this point they were still kind of balancing it based on Pearled Unicorn. Kind of. 3 mana for 2/2. Meh. But you pay the kicker cost. Now you're paying 6 mana. Now it's a 4/4 first strike at common, which is not terrible. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's okay. You know, that's a far sight better than the Ardent. I almost said Argent Soldier. That's a lot better than the Ardent Soldier. A 4/4 first strike for 6 mana is not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. If you are doing the sort of thing that I do with a lot of these decks that are based on just commons, then Benelash Lancer might actually find its way in. Do I expect it? No. But I can conceivably find my way to, saying, you know what, that makes sense. Harsh Judgment. If an instant or sorcery spell of the chosen color would deal damage to you, it deals that damage to its controller instead. I think that means... Honestly, Scornful Egotist? The problem with Scornful Egotist is, yes, it's an 8-drop. But assuming you don't have another way to make it work, you're spending 4 mana on a 1/1. If you have another way to make it work, what are you getting out of it? Like, it's the annoying thing about Scornful Egotist, in that block, it had an actual reason for existing. But for Scornful Egotist, for 1 less mana, you have what? Oh gods, what do you call it? Mirror Enforcer. Which is a 4/4. It doesn't have any other relevant abilities, doesn't have first strike, trample, flying, anything else. But it's a 4/4 for 1 less mana. If you're doing something of that nature, you would be further ahead with, oh, Hummerhead spawning bed. The creature needs to be blue. So, yeah. One of the decks that I'm working on that I haven't finished, but I'm building mono green burn. And I have the main deck itself. I just have to figure out the rest of the mana base. But I have the main deck itself done. And I have 7 creatures in here whose job it is to do exactly what you're looking at. Which means punching through for damage even though it's blocked. Because all these cards here all basically have that same ability. This is a mono green burn deck. This is a deck whose job is to burn your opponent's face off. Starting with small things like Hornet Sting and Onyaro Beast Sting and cards of that nature. You know, plenty of Hurricane variants. A handful of life loss cards through cards like Scrawling Crawler and Glass Asp. A bit of poison. You know, 7 hasty creatures that are just going to run in and smash you hard. You know, it is reasonable to build a mono green burn deck. More so than I thought. Not easy, but possible. So yes, building around effects like rocks, I would say yes, it's doable. I wouldn't expect it to be like, 20 cards deep sort of thing, but I think having a few of them. So, annoying and want to get him to branch out. So, have you seen this guy yet? Mana-wise, it's expensive AF. Yeah, well, yeah. This does so many things. His flyers can't attack in the first place. Oh, you know what else is fun against flying? Is this thing. Creatures with flying tend to be smaller than creatures without flying. 4 damage kind of does a lot. Excuse me. So, starting point, look into the original Time Spiral block. Time Spiral, Planar Chaos, Future Sight. More relevantly, the first two. You are going to find red cards that hate on flyers. Like this. Oh yeah, I mean Chaos Sphere would work. You want to you're playing Zedru, which I think is Jeskai? Yes. You get access to this. All your stuff flies. Anything that belongs to any of your opponents can't fly. Not allowed to fly. Creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. No matter what they do, their stuff will never fly, as literally, as long as your type of imagination is in play. Color. Burning Pomfret. If the creature is small enough, or has already taken damage from, say, Raking Canopy, shoot the creature for 2 more damage. By the way, you lose flying till end of turn now. Oh, Dizzying Gaze. That looks fun. Enchant creature you control. Red. Enchant creature deals 1 damage to target creature with flying. Enchanted creature. If you have a random creature with Death Touch, for every point of red mana, it's like 1 damage to target creature with flying. Notepad. Come here. Goblin Sky Cutter will also, you can sack it to make something lose flying. Hammerheim Deadeye, I pointed out already. Reckless Airstrike, 3 damage to target creature with flying. Shredded Sails, 4 damage to target creature with flying. Both of which also have an optional mode of destroying an artifact. Sunset Strike Master. This is going to be fun. 2 mana for a 3/1 that you can tap for red, or pay 3 and tap it to deal 6 damage to a flyer. That's going to kill a lot. PGG. Oh yes, the Skeet Shooter. Love this card. Pay 2 to make something gain flying till end of turn, which you're not going to have to worry about. 5, tap, destroy target creature with flying. So, you have a few options. I mean, yes, but you can kill anything. And because it's tap, it's not tap and sack, you can keep reusing it turn after turn after turn after turn. And you can find ways to untap it, and you can find ways to reduce the cost, etc., etc. White is not going to really help you there. Blue's going to give you, you might have one or two options. Well, you'll have one or two options. The best bet to find stuff from to help you with that, Descent of the Dragons. Oh, its controller gets them. Okay. I thought it said you get them. Oh. Oh. Expensive AF, but Insurrection. Gain control of all creatures. 8 mana. Like I said, expensive AF, but Insurrection. Day of the Dragons. 7 mana. When this enchantment enters, exile all creatures you control, then create that many 5/5 red dragon creature dragons with flying. You polymorph them all into 5/5 dragons. If you can make this leave the battlefield first, sacrifice all dragons you control. Well, you haven't made any, and you're playing with ground creatures, so the chance of you having dragons. Yes, but you lose creatures that way. But yes. Have Day of the Dragons. Day of the Dragons, come into playability, goes on the stack. Return Day of the Dragons back to your hand. Sacrifice all dragons you control. Hopefully you don't have any. Then return the exile cards to the battlefield under your control. You don't have any to return because nothing's been exiled yet. Then it's coming to playability results. When it enters, exile all creatures you control. And then you make a bunch of 5/5 dragons. So what you do is you steal your opponent's creatures and turn them all into dragons, and they don't get them back. There are ways around things. Again, Magic has been around for over 30 years. You can find ways to do weird stuff if you need to. Again, there's always a way. Do you know the way? But yeah, Harsh Judgment. If an instant sorcery of the chosen color would deal damage to you. So this is a card where ideally you want damage getting redirected to you, so you can get it redirected back to its controller. So that's an option to make Harsh Judgment work. I can't remember what cards you would need to be able to... Oh! I think Personal Incarnation works. The next one damage should be dealt to its creatures, dealt to its owners instead. Yes, Personal Incarnation would combine with that. Oh yeah, Wing Shard. Wing Shards is hilarious. We might get to that when we actually get to handling Scourge. Prison Barricade. Yeah, anything that's got Storm is really fun and interesting. Some of them can be more dangerous than others, but a lot of them are fun and interesting. Oh man, do you know what would be funny? It's like a 4 mana red spell that had like add red to your mana pool, Storm. I'm gonna have to make a note of that idea. Prison Barricade, 2 mana for a 1/3 wall. Fine. Kicker cost of 2 more, enters with a +1 counter on it. So for 4 mana, you get a 2/4. That's still a wall, but can attack as though it didn't have Defender. For 4 mana, you have a 2/4. You have a 2/4 for 4 mana with a weird creature type. If you do want to build an attacking wall deck, I mean, you can run Prison Barricade, and that would logically make sense. That Toughness Matters does not mind seeing it as a 1/3 to begin with, although there's better options for that. I think the best bet for this would be like an attacking wall deck. Strength of Unity. 4 mana, the best you can get out of this is +5/+5. I think +3/+3 is about where it wants to be. Like in terms of cost balance. So getting +4/+4 or +5/+5 would be really good. If you just need an outright size boost, it's okay. But there's even in white, there's often better cards for something like that. Your various ethereal armor cards are usually better than that. Winnow. I think if you're playing a healthy number of white cards in your deck, Winnow should be, like, I'd say probably if your deck is like at least a third white cards. So 99, assume 39 lands. I'd say at least 15 if you've got at least 15 to 20 white cards in your deck, consider throwing in, and especially more true if you've got more, consider throwing Winnow in your deck, because you're going to find people who target non-land permanent. First of all, it'll blow up any duplicatable token. It'll blow up a goblin token, it'll blow up a dragon token, it'll blow up a clue token, because not unreasonably somebody's going to have one in play. Second of all, if you're running a good proportion, say 25 white cards, it is not unreasonable that somebody is playing Slimes Against Humanity, Persistent Petitioners, um, Shadowborn Apostle, one of the various you can run as many copies as you want cards. This is not unreasonable. Oh, no. Are you kidding me? Ah, son of a biscuit. I do not know what is going on with my stream tonight. Things do not want to behave. Yeah. Clone decks. Yeah, good. Also a good call. There's enough different decks out there. It can blow up an opposing Soul Ring because chances are somebody else has got a Soul Ring in play. You're going to find, I would say, if you've got enough white in your deck, you're going to find just enough opportunity to make Winnow work. That it's like 2 mana, blow up that thing, and draw a card. It is a card that one can reasonably play. Worrell? Oh. You mean this guy? When Wick or another rat you control enters, a mass snails one. Well, that could be a lot of card draw. Again, this is another one of those cards where I want something like Masquerade Nexus or the like in there. Obsidian Acolyte. This and Crimson Acolyte both see a decent amount of pauper plays, so that's got to say something. Because it's like being able to give, for 1 mana, giving target creature protection from black, and in the case of Crimson, protection from red, until end of turn. And again, it says target creature, it does not say target creature you control. You can protect a lot of things. Creatures you control gain protection from the chosen color till end of turn. The first problem with Glory is it has to be in your graveyard. And graveyard removal is pretty easy to come by. In fact, the two colors that have the biggest issues with graveyard removal, which are red and blue, even if you're playing mono brown, you have access to a good amount of graveyard removal. Relica Progenitus, Honored Heirloom, Tormod's Crypt. There's a bunch of cards. There's lands, scavenger grounds. It's viable, but if you want to make, in my opinion, if you want to make a good reanimator deck, don't rely on reanimation. So let's get you an example here. This is my Jund Reanimator deck. And I have 12 cards in it whose job it is to reanimate. But then I have, most relevantly, Quicksilver Amulet and Elvish Piper, whose job it is to put a creature from my hand into play. I have cards like Zombie Infestation that can turn cards I discard into tokens that I can attack with. You know, I do have, ideally I want to be reanimating, but I do have ways to get past, I do have first of all, I have ways to blow up stuff that they're going to be using to try and stop my reanimation shenanigans. I have Shattergang Brothers, which is going to blow up an artifact, a creature, or an enchantment, which are your primary methods of dealing with enchantments, or dealing with graveyards. That's only a 4-drop. And I have ways to bypass if somebody tries to blow up my graveyard. So, I'm not saying don't play it, but I'm also saying build with the assumption that people are going to hate on it. Because green, black, and white all have commonly played tools for dealing with graveyards. And green and black, I would say probably at least 50%. I haven't run any numbers or anything, but I would say at least 50, maybe as much as 75% of decks that people actually legitimately sit down at the table and play are one of those two colors. Which one's Disa? Disa the Restless. Whatever, Lurgoyf. That's cute. In a format like Commander, I assume people are going to blow up my, try and blow up my graveyard, either wholesale or specific cards at a time. I don't know about good. It looks interesting and it looks different. Beyond that, I don't know. It's something I'd have to stop and think about. But it would definitely be different. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a smart move to, even if you're building Reanimator, put in a few cards. Might even be like 2 or 3. Like, put in a couple of cards to deal with, because somebody's going to have some kind of graveyard hate, which could be a copy of Scavenging Ooze. I mean, my mono green control deck. Actually, why don't I pull out the actual deck? Where are you? Yeah, I'm playing mono green control. Deal with it. You're upside down. Why are you upside down? You should not be upside down. So I have night soil. I know I have scavenging ooze in here. So that already gives me 2 pieces of graveyard removal. Yeah, there's my scavenging ooze. It might only be the 2. You're a food token. Yeah, it looks like only the it looks like only the 2 in here at this point. But again, that's still something to keep my eye on. Is the fact that, hey, guess what? People have, and I think there might be a scavenging grounds in here as well. Because I want to make sure that, like, the problem, quote unquote, with reanimation is regardless of what format you play, it's a common deck idea. Even in standard, reanimation exists, and you're normally looking at somebody running, like, let's say, Abuelo's Awakening to try and get back omniscience. Sometimes other stuff as well, but that's not unheard of. Pioneer, it exists. Modern, it exists. In general, I don't mind them. I I personally prefer cards that will, if I'm hating on a color, I want to hate on something that either I know I'm going to be playing against. So if, let's say, my local game store, there's a couple of people that are always playing white, then I think Havoc is fine. Barring something like that, I would assume that something that hates on green and or black would be really good. So, for example, compost. Whenever a black card is put in an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may draw a card. Because the chances somebody playing black is really high. The chance of somebody playing green is really high. White, more commonly, from what experience I have, which, again, I'm not playing all the time, this, that, and everything else, but from what I've experienced, white rarely gets played on its own, whereas green and black, that's actually, a reasonable, viable option. White, red, and blue, much less common that they're played straight up. Although when red does, it's usually goblins. But they're usually played in combination with something else. You know, red decks aren't generally red decks. They are Gruul, they are Jund, they are Boros. They're red plus one or more other colors. Blue decks are rarely blue decks. They are Dimir, they are Grixis, they are Azorius. They're blue plus something else. Same with white. So, in a but black and red are good enough and interesting enough, and generally from, discussions, between players at local game stores and this, that, and everything else, they're usually considered good enough and strong enough and interesting enough that you can build them mono. And that's a reasonable assumption. Or you can play them in combination with other colors. You can play green in Jund and Gruul and Simic. Simic is a really common 2-color combination. You can play black in Orzhov or damn it, I keep thinking of the wrong color examples. This is why I always have to stop and think. Mardu is, gets a decent amount of play. These options all exist and are all reasonable, but realistically speaking, yeah, light of day, I can see people playing that. I think I would more likely be playing a card like that if it hated on green. Because sometimes black doesn't care as much about attacking or blocking, although that depends on the specific deck. Black has also got the ability to do combo stuff. Yeah. Apparently I misspelled you last time. This thing is hilarious. This isn't quite what you're looking for, but this is hilarious. Not what you're looking for. But it is kind of funny. But yeah, if you're looking for color hate, I would generally start off in a vacuum. I would start off against black and green. If you have people that you have to worry, about, then you can take their decks into consideration. The other thing is, though, depending on the kind of people you're playing against, I still want them to be able to play the game. Okay, yeah, I could kind of see it. But I still want them to be able to play the game because I know myself how I feel. If I get locked out of playing the game, I stop having fun. Let me rephrase that. In a casual setting, playing around at the kitchen table or something of that nature, I stop having fun. No, no, no. I mean, if you lock me out of playing the game when we're sitting at the kitchen table, I might as well. My attitude at that point is I might as well just pack my shit up and leave. On the other hand, if I'm in a tournament setting, my attitude towards it is completely different. Because my brain goes, this is a competitive event. This is a part of the game that people use as a strategy to help win the game. Suddenly, my brain accepts that, and I can just keep going. And I can deal with the game accordingly. But in a casual setting, if I feel I can't actually play the game, I can't do what my deck is trying to do at all because I'm being locked out of playing. I'm stuck on 3 lands for 7 turns in a row for whatever reason. Anything along that line. I stop having fun and I'm like, I have seen my mood just go absolutely totally sour. Now, to be fair, that's me. That's not necessarily the person that you're dealing with. But I do want you to be aware there are people that will handle things that way. Um, and if this person is like that, that's a situation you're going to have to deal with. Whereas an effect like compost, fair. I mean, at that point, you have options. Um, you know, giving uh what are you called? Leyline of Sanctity and Eldrazi Monument. Monument? I think that's the card I'm thinking of. Yeah. Eldrazi Monument. Give your stuff indestructible. And Leyline of Sanctity. And it doesn't have to be the leyline, it's just that's an option. You have hexproof. You put the two of those together, and it's really hard for them to actually do anything to you. Yeah. I believe that every deck should have a couple of big haymaker cards. The kind of cards where it's like, the table better deal with this, or the table is in trouble. Grafted Exoskeleton, in my opinion, falls in that vein. Giving one of your creatures infect and +2/+2, throw it on an Ornithopter. I hit you for 2 poison every turn. If you're playing white, True Conviction. Yeah, it's Grafted Exoskeleton is really good. Put throw one into a few of your decks. True Conviction. Creatures you can. I can ignore the last part of this. Creatures you control have double strike. Um. The problem with Hold the Line comes from that first word. You need enough creatures in play to be able to mount a defense that you're not attacking with. If you have enough creatures to hold the line, you're probably better off attacking with those creatures and trying to get damage through. What's the card I'm thinking of? I can't remember the name of you. Wait. This. I hate it when I can't remember the name of a card, and I don't want to look it up first. I want to try and... You guys go there. Why you're not there, I don't know. That's what it was. If you're considering an effect like Hold the Line, you're generally better off considering an effect like Guardian's Pledge instead. The other thing to keep in mind about an effect like Guardian's Pledge is because it is also, like, they're both instants, but this only affects white creatures as opposed to, like, it affects a color of creature rather than a status of creature. So if somebody casts an effect like... Somebody casts a Blasphemous Act, and you've got creatures that are a decent size already, and maybe you've got something else going on to help make them bigger. Guardian's Pledge might be enough to keep them alive. Hold the Line only works while a creature is in combat. So this can be used like a mass giant growth effect. I should be pointing that way. This can be used like a mass giant growth effect. Whereas Hold the Line only works for creatures that are in combat that are being used offensively. So it's a much more narrow time that you can use it. This is also why, like, it's kind of like the same idea of why I keep pointing to cards like Broken Wings and similar effects. You know, Broken Wings, and I personally like Creeping Mold and Bramble Crush and the like as removal for dealing with or Reclamation Stage for ways of dealing with enchantments or artifacts, because they can either hit more than just artifacts or enchantments, or they have they have something else in addition to I can only hit artifacts or enchantments. Broken Wings also has the ability of hitting a flyer. Reclamation Sage also has the fact that it's a body. Bramble Crush can also hit a planeswalker or a battle. Creeping Mold can hit a land or an artifact. Well, artifact is already included. But it can hit like an artifact creature, which Bramble Crush won't be able to because I think it's non-creature permanent. But the flexibility is really useful. Guardian's Pledge, yes, you can only hit white creatures with it, but if your entire deck is white, it's affecting your entire creature. All your creatures. Hold the Line is basically that small window where combat happens, and that's it. Outside of combat, it's useless. So I'm probably over explaining again, as I've been known to do many, many times in my life. But TLDR, it has a low amount of flexibility, which is why it gives so large a, yes. There's multiple ways to build it. Keep in mind that when you're playing something face down, you are casting a creature spell. If you've got anything that can reduce the cost of casting a creature spell, as opposed to a spell with a specific creature type, like Stink Drink or Daredevil or whatever it's called, that reduces giants. But if you've got something that says creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Cool, my morphs now cost me 2 mana instead of 3. And then you've got you've got a couple of different ways to do it. You can flicker them. You can turn them face up the normal way. There are cards that will turn around and flip stuff face up for you. And it's also not completely unreasonable to play with only certain specific ones. There are decks where, well, the only one I actually want to play is Exalted Angel. Or the only one I actually want to play in this deck is Bane of the Living. Or the only one I actually want to play in this deck is Lumen Thread Field. There are morphs to cover a bunch of bases. Some of them have got ways to turn themselves back face down. Some of them you'll want something like a way to return it back to your hand so you can recast it. And there are generals that specifically care about you casting stuff face down. What? How? How? Oh. There we go. Sort by color. So Exodore Reality Sculptor is an option. So that can allow you to just spend 3 mana to turn any face down creature face up. Etrata Deadly Fugitive can let you spend 4 mana to turn it face up, and you're playing blue-black, so you've got more options in terms of colors. Whenever face down, you can return to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. If it's a permanent card, then turn it face up. So Yaris can do it in red-green. That's not completely unreasonable. Callous Dyes of the Glade, you're looking at Naya. Turn target face down, attacking creature you control face up. Cadena, I think Cadena is the one people typically, historically, anywhere we're playing, and that's Teamer. The first face down creature, yeah, this feels right. Creature spell you cast each turn costs 3 less to cast, so your first one's free. Whenever face down creature enters under your control, draw a card. So there are other options as well, but those are the ones that jump out at me as stuff people are likely to be playing. Missy, probably the Doctor Who card. Yep. Yeah, so if you want to build around face down, it's an option. Sunlight Administration. Oh yeah, prevent all damage to be dealt to you this turn by a source of your choice. Whenever damage from black or red source is prevented this way, you gain that much life. Again, if you're playing, here's the thing, if you're playing a deck based around damage prevention, Sunlight Administration, much stronger than Orm's Touch. So much better for something like that. Shoreline Raider, 3 mana 2/2 protection from Kavu. Again, I will point out, Kavu is a creature type. Anything that has all creature types is also a Kavu. Consider this in your decks if you're looking for some interesting way of protection. Xanamjin, probably slightly better than the other gens of this cycle. It becomes a 3/4 flyer if blue's the most common. However, blue is less commonly played. It's less commonly played on its own. It's almost always played in combination with something else, and not unreasonably two something else's. So blue being the most commonly played is going to be not impossible, but I would say unlikely. You do only get a 5/6 flyer, but that's still fine. And a 3/4 flyer is still okay. But why? Did I have you heard oh have you heard about my mono blue deck, which is not a pure counterspell deck. In fact, it only has a single counterspell in it. It has some ability to draw cards. This deck, according to one of the people from one of my LGSs, is a blue deck that identifies as green. It ramps the way a green deck does. It has creatures that taps for mana. It fetches lands out. It casts it casts fairly big stuff. It has one counter spell, which is mana drain, mostly to get extra mana. Even if the spell says it can't be countered, that's nice. I still end up with extra mana. My green deck, on the other hand, is a control deck that's got at least 4 counter spells, including one card that can counter stuff turn after turn after turn, and beats them with flying creatures. That's my green deck. Skyweaver. Target white or black creature gains flying till end of turn. If you're playing something along the lines of soldiers, Skyweaver would actually be an interesting add, because soldiers don't generally fly. If you're building angels, you don't need it. If you're building spirits, you probably don't need it. If you're building... But this is one of those situations where take a look at the colors you're playing. Are you playing white and or black? Okay. How many of my creatures have flying or have an easy way to get flying? If the answer is very little, Skyweaver is not terrible. Again, it's a 2 mana 2/1, which is perfectly, like, especially when you're looking at blue, that's perfectly serviceable. Just pay 2 and give a creature flying till end of turn. That can be huge. Offensive, defensive, messing up with combat math for other players. You know, you could be this person versus this, this person's attacking this one. I'm going to attack with 6 angels. What'll you do for me if I give 6 of your creatures flying till end of turn? Wait, what? They're both go... I won't attack you for the next 3 turns. I'll leave all your stuff alone for the next 3 turns. Deal. Skyweaver. Decent card. Rainbow Crow. You're paying 1 more mana over... You're paying 1 more mana... Pardon me. You're paying 1 more mana over Windrake for an activated ability that says, I can become any color. At first glance, right off the top, my brain said any color or color combination. The problem is there's the existence of shift, which for an extra mana, you lose flying, but you gain 2 extra points of power. And it's an upkeep cost, and it can become any color combination you want. I would rather play Shift over Rainbow Crow. Rainbow Crow's one of those situations where you really need it to be color X. I don't think... again, bird tribal, maybe. Meta threat aerostat. Meta threat aerostat is kind of cute. Again, one more mana, in this case a blue mana, over Windrake. But for pay blue plus X, you can send the aerostat back to your hand to put a creature card from your hand that costs X. I've got a random 7 or 8 mana floating around. I'm gonna take the aerostat back, and I'm gonna put in a giant ocean beast instead as a blocker during combat. Wait, what? Yeah. This is one of those things that's good like every other turn sort of thing. But yeah, this can completely muck around with people's ability to play the game. And in fact, this was a consideration in my mono blue ramp deck. Because suddenly I can drop a big creature into play at instant speed, and I'm not casting it. This is an activated ability. I'm not casting the creature. So, an effect like Essence Scatter, Remove Soul, etc., that can counter target creature spell doesn't work. You need something that counters an activated ability, which is a lot harder. And again, no restriction on when you can play this, so you can do this at any time. I have a Star Whale. Eight mana, 8/8 Flying Vigilance with Ward 2. And suspend 6 for 2 6 turns for 2 mana. But it's a giant creature that gives all your other creatures Ward 2. By the way, it's also got Flying and Vigilance. It's basically an oversized blue Sarah Angel with additional upside. Okay, attack with this. My aerostat's not going to be able to handle that. So I'll return it back to my hand and put this thing in instead. Oh, crap. Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the reason why we get to play with omniscience these days. Vodalian Serpent. 4 mana for 2/2 creature. Can't attack unless defending player controls an island. Pay an extra 4 mana and it enters basically as a 6/6. The best part here, you still have that can't attack unless the defender controls an island. But it does enter with +1 counters. Probably the best thing here is if you've got some way to make use of the fact that it's got counters. Are you playing Simic? First of all, if you're playing with Giant Ocean Beasts, there's better than this, especially nowadays, Tellurian Terror and all that jazz. This also... probably the best thing I can say about this card, realistically, trying to be charitable here, is, especially if you're playing Simic, if you're considering this card at all, it's because you're mucking around with +1/+1 counters. At which point that might be something that you might have an interest in, because having 4 additional +1 counters is kind of nice. And then having stuff like Karn's Bastion to be able to proliferate them and so forth. Baron's Unmaking. Return target permanent to its owner's hand if that permanent shares a color with the most common color among permanents or a color tied for most common. What's the most common color among stuff we've got in play? Green. Cool. Bounce target green permanent. Is basically how that works. Again, black and green are going to be the most common, so chances are you're going to bounce something that's black or green. Chances are fairly high. I'd say at least 50-50 that it's going to, again, at least 50-50 that's going to be black or green. Not a terrible card. You might bounce only a token. You might bounce somebody's general. Especially fun if your opponent's like, I attack with all these creatures. And you go, okay, well, return your general back to your hand. Wait, what? Yo, return your general back to your hand. It's okay. Sapphire Leech. 2 mana for a 2/2 flyer that makes all your blue spells cost blue more. I'm a little surprised this is as high up on the list as it is. When you compare it to, I mean, I would play Baron's Unmaking before that, Metathran Aerostat before that, Skyweaver before that, probably even Shoreline Raider before that. The other 3 that we've covered so far in blue are like, eh. The problem, Sapphire Leech, making all your blue spells cost an additional blue, really puts a damper on things. So, do you have a way to compensate for that? Your primary way to compensate for that would probably be the son of a biscuit. What do you call it? There's one for every color. Defiler. Was it Defiler of Dreams? Yeah, Defiler of Dreams. If you can copy a Defiler of Dreams, if even a single copy, suddenly your blue spells are like 2 Phyrexian blue mana available. So you cast 1, and then the second one you can cast for 4 mana plus 2 life, or 2 blue plus 3. And then that would make, say, Sapphire Leech. You could cast this for 1 mana plus, 2 life. Blue spells cost, an additional blue. You can bypass a lot of that, and okay, fine. I basically have to pay 2 life. My blue spells now cost an additional 2 life to pay. Well, I can find ways around that. Yeah. But without the Defiler of Dreams, Sapphire Leech ends up being a little rough. You can never tap out for stuff. Because, if you want to be able to cast the, what's that, is it Fierce Guardianship I'm thinking of? Yeah, Fierce Guardianship. You still have to keep a blue mana open if you've got the Sapphire Leech in play. Which means you're leaving a blue mana up. Okay. you probably have some sort of interaction. Hey, Holly. She's back. Sapphire Leech's biggest benefit is probably the fact that it's a 2 mana 2/2 flyer. Which means if you're looking for something remotely aggressive, it's a not unreasonable starting point. But then you have to take a look at what the rest of your creatures look like if you add an extra blue mana to all the blue creatures. Yeah. But the funny thing is, out of the bottom 8 blue cards in Invasion, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 cards that I would play above, probably 4 above Sapphire Leech. And we're looking at the bottom 8. And out of the bottom 8, Sapphire Leech is the highest rated one. Speaking about aggro and weird stuff like that, Meta Transport. One of the various decks, I think it's Simic, is an unblockable deck. 1/3 flyer that can't be blocked by blue creatures. By the way, this is blue till end of turn. Wait, what? Yeah, this is blue till end of turn. In a deck that's trying to push through, that's trying to hit for damage and be unblockable, that can mess up a lot of things. I think I can find... Hilariously, I also just noticed it changes creature type completely. Meta Transport used to be a creature ship. Now it's creature Metathran. It went from here's the vessel to here's the people that are on board the vessel. But Metathran Transport, I can find a home for in, like, Simic Unblockable. I don't know if I'd end up using it, but it's, again, it's one of those cards that's like, that could be fun. And hilariously, that last ability, target creature becomes blue till end of turn. There are cards that care about stuff being blue. No, not a use for Thought Lace, because stuff's already going to be blue. But no, there are cards I trying to remember. Grand Architect, do you do what I'm thinking of? Yes. Okay, that's kind of silly. Tap an untapped blue creature you control. Add 2 mana. Spend only to activate spells. Okay. So, you pay a blue, turn a given creature blue. Tap it to add 2 colorless. Take that 2 colorless, put into a gemstone array. That's an activated ability that puts a charge counter on. Take that charge counter and remove it to add a blue. Get back to the beginning. It doesn't do anything. It just starts making random stuff blue in the meantime. Basically, you go through an entire set. You can make an infinite number of creatures blue and end up with a bunch of tapped creatures. And that's it. It doesn't do anything else. There's probably better ways to pull that off. Vodalian Merchant. I don't remember if you're in my mono blue commons deck. Mono blue commons, aka take me down to Cantrip City. This wee little beastie. I do know that when I was sketching it out, nope. There it is. Vodalian Merchant. The entire deck is as many cards as I can, as many cards as possible, have to draw me cards. I don't care if I also have to discard cards, but they have to draw me cards. Dig, 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 dig. Dig, 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 dig. Dig, 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 dig. Dig, 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 dig. Yeah, Vodalian Merchant is in this deck. Because 2 mana for 1/2 creature comes in play, draw a card, and discard a card. The discard is not relevant in this context. It's the fact that I draw a card. It only runs about 34 lands. Because I'm drawing so many cards, I'm like, I can cut a couple of lands. There is a home for it. Mono blue deck, commons only, based around drawing all the cards. Drawing all... Even lands have, like, something like cycling to basically draw extra cards. Fairy Squadron. 1 blue for a 1/1, which sounds about right. If you pay the kicker cost, it ends up being a 5 mana 3/3 flyer. It does if you kick it. Yeah. If you kick the fairies, they fly away. Kick the fairies. Demonetized. This, that. Yeah. I know. If I'm building Fairy Tribal and I'm playing with commons, I might consider it. I think I would have preferred if it was like a 0/1 flyer that entered, if you kicked it, it entered with like 3+1 counters or something. I don't know. I don't see a good home for this card. This was fine and limited. I think that's probably was its best home, was limited. Essence Leak. Throw this on a red or green permanent, and now that card has got an upkeep cost of whatever its mana cost is. Or you have to sack the permanent. Keep in mind that lands, by default, do not have a color unless an effect gives them one. And even if that's true, lands don't have a mana cost. So being able to do it on a land that is somehow green, like Dryad Arbor, because it actually says it's green, you're not going to have to pay any cost. No. Lands do not have mana costs. They might feel like it. No. Okay, find me an actual land that has a mana cost. Okay. Zoetic Cavern does not have a mana cost. The mana cost would be up here in the top right corner. No. The mana cost of Essence Leak is 1 blue. It is weirdly possible to be able to cast this, but the land in and of it, but as a land, it does not have a mana cost. You are paying a cost because you're. The only reason it has any sort of cost at all is because you're casting it as a creature for 3. But now you're casting it as a creature. You can only cast. You can only have an actual mana cost when you cast something, and you don't cast lands. Yeah, I like to joke that they are lands with a mana cost, but they're not. No, Gateway Commons isn't. No, Gateway Plaza. Oh, my dog. Yeah. I like to I like to think of this as a land that has a mana cost, but it doesn't have a mana cost because mana cost would be based on what's up here in the top right corner, and this does not have that. I get your perspective on that. I understand your perspective on that. I think about them that way. But reality says you ask somebody, what the rules say, and they're like, yeah, lands do not have a mana cost. It feels like it, but that's like saying that, that's like saying cards like Sacred Foundry. If I pay 2 life, it enters untapped. No. If you don't pay 2 life, it enters tapped. Another effect can still have it enter tapped, regardless of whether you're paying the 2 life or not. Yes, and nothing on this card says it actually has a mana cost. This has an ability that triggers when it enters the battlefield. Counter the triggered ability, and you don't have to worry about it. Not Torpor Orb. What are you called? Strict Proctor. That's the card I was thinking of. Whenever a permanent entering causes a triggered ability to trigger, counters that ability unless its controller pays 2. You have this in play. You drop a Gateway Plaza. This ability triggers. Counter this trigger unless they pay 2. Choose not to pay the 2. This ability gets countered. You never have to pay the 1. Anywho, Essence Leak. Yeah, Pendrel Flux I think I probably covered back when I did Saga. Pendrel Flux. Pay this creature's... Yeah. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. The difference is Pendrel Flux costs 1 more but doesn't care what color of card it's on. I think in Commander Essence Leak you'll find something you can throw it on. Black cards look better each day. Go ham, Jin. 6 mana for a 3/3 that's 2 to regenerate. Again, the biggest problem... well, first of all, a lot of people think he looks like some version of Batman. You're alongside Mana Web. Yeah, a lot of people think he looks like Batman. That being said, Goem Jin, which also is 1 letter away from saying Gotham Jin, was okay, but again, black being one of the 2 most common colors for Commander, from what I've come across. Black being the most common color is really easy, which makes this basically be a 3/3 regenerator for 6 mana, which is not worth it. Hate Weaver, again, you can pump any blue or red creature, not just a red or blue creature you control. So if you're playing with something like Timor and Lumia, you can pump that as well. Or, you know, if somebody's got Zedroom play, you can go, cool, I'll pump that. The funny thing is, if somebody's playing with illusions, illusions tend to have this funny thing about, you know, if they're targeted, you sacrifice them. And the primary way to get around that is, well, Lure of Illusions. If they don't have that in play and they got like Phantasmal Bears and Phantasmal Dragon and other similar cards, cool. Target you with a Hate Weaver, your creature dies. Because they generally have an ability that says, hey, you've been targeted. Do-do-do-do, Phantasmal Dragon, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Whenever this creature becomes target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. 5/5 flyer for 4 mana. Really good. Until you target it with... The funny thing is, cards like this die to a pump spell. Not a pump spell being used on the... You know, on other... No. Target this with a pump spell, this thing dies. So, again, Hate Weaver, you can pump an opponent's creature. You can, pump one of your own creatures. You can use the fact that it targets to make a mess of things. Plus, it's also a zombie. Plus, it's also a wizard. Both of which are going to be relevant creature types to some deck or other. Kind of a fun card to play with. Defiling Tears. I like this card. I just don't think it's that good anymore. Oh, wait. Hello. I apologize. I just reread this card. So first of all, it's a 3 mana instant. And gives you the ability to pay a red mana to regenerate the creature that you cast this on. Okay. Until the end of turn, target creature becomes black. That rarely actually does anything. Gets +1, -1. You realize I thought this was +1/+1? This does mean that you can use it not just as a pump spell, but also as a removal spell without resorting to shenanigans like, helping somebody's got a Phantasmal Dragon in play. I need to kill your squirrel token. Die. Oh, damn, if I could deal 1 more damage to this creature. How about I kill it for you? Wait, what? Because there's been a lot of times when 1 extra point of damage would change how a game turns out. Might actually be slightly better than I thought. Urborg Shambler. Play this in a deck where this is the only black creature in your deck apart from... Well, I was going to say apart from your general. But that doesn't even necessarily have to be true, because your general could have a black activated ability. Chatterfang. Green commander with a black activated ability. Therefore, it's a black-green card, as far as commander is concerned. If you have other black cards in the deck, but no black creatures, run Urborg Shambler. Other black creatures get -1/-1. Not black creatures you control. You now have a 4 mana 4/3 that's going to... suddenly somebody's opposing army, like, I don't know, the zombie deck on the table, their zombies now all start off as 1/1s instead of 2/2s. And I'm referring to the tokens, obviously. Then you get cards like Viscerous here, which will come into play dead. No ability to sack it or anything in response. It comes into play. The game sees a 0/0 creature in play and immediately says blow it up. before players get a chance to do anything, game's already like, nope, you get blowed up now. So this should actually see more play in decks where you have access to black, but you're not playing with black creatures. Which sounds a bit weird, but again, a deck like Chatterfang can make use of that. Phyrexian Reaper. Reaper. You know you are a Reaper. Um, 5 mana for a 3/3. When it's blocked by something green, that creature gets blowed up. This happens before combat damage happens. Oh, that's an interesting looking weapon. This is like, you know, some of those guns that you see in certain movies and stuff like that, where it's like the trigger's down here, you've got something up here to hold on to, but it ends like a drill. Well, crap. So that, yeah. But again, green, commonly played color in Commander. Go ahead. Throw all the green cards in front of this you want. Yeah. Play this more. Phyrexian Flyer. Slightly smaller for... So for 1 less mana, lose a point of power and a point of toughness. Give it flying instead, and the same ability against white. Okay, so white is realistically, white's going to be looking at soldiers, humans, angels. Like, those are going to be your... Yeah. In limited, I might even call this a bomb. Because it's a 2/2 flyer for 4 mana, which isn't, you know, it's not amazing, but it's not terror bad. But just the fact that you can, you know, you can keep attacking with impunity, and people who try and block with something that's white, and it's like, okay, kill it. Okay, so you're doing combat. No. Before combat damage, even just kill it. Wait, what? Nice, you know, nice Boros creature you've got. Kill it. What? Yeah. I think it is... I feel like Phyrexian Slayer might actually be worth playing. I'll be honest, if you're building Phyrexians as your deck concept, Phyrexians or minions, basically one of the 2 creature types that is. If that's the creature type, like if you're building based on creature type and you're building off of one of those 2, might be worth thinking about. Androdite Leech. I would still call this better than Sapphire Leech. I'm not saying it's good, but I would rate this higher than Sapphire Leech because rather than flying, it does get the shade ability. The Sapphire Leech was a 2/2 for 2. No, it is arguably better than Frozen Shade, though, because Frozen Shade had the same cost, but was a 0/1. This is a Frozen Shade with Unholy Strength thrown onto it. Beat nuts. Yeah, this is a Frozen Shade with Unholy Strength thrown on it. And instead of having to pay for the Unholy Strength, you're paying an extra black for your black cards. But black can accept that more easier than blue can, in my opinion. Black has ways to generate excess mana without without a crazy mana difficulty, and the difference between paying 4 mana for damnation versus 5 mana for damnation, for example, is not actually as big a deal as it would be for a color like blue, because blue wants to save up all its mana to be able to cast stuff on its opponent's turn. In general. Granted, some decks, like my mono blue ramp deck, play it differently. However, as a general rule of thumb, blue doesn't want to have to do stuff on their turn, and they want to be able to save their mana. And you're restricting options. Black is quite happy to just throw things at the wall until it sticks. This is less of a drawback to a black deck than a similar ability is for blue. And you have the shade ability to help compensate for the fact that you're losing out on tempo. Duskwalker. I didn't like this back in the day, but I mean, I'm looking at it now. It's 1 black for 1/1, or 5 mana for a 3/3 with Fear. A 3/3 with Fear for 5 mana feels about right. Because I think a 2/2 with Fear was generally about 3 mana compared to 1/1 for a 1/1 with Fear for 1 mana. It would basically be 1 mana and then 3 for 2, and then 5 feels right for a 3/3. So this feels about the right cost, and Fear is actually a pretty good evasive ability. It needs to be blocked by black or artifact creatures, otherwise it's getting through. Now again, black being really common in Commander, this is going to, I would still say that probably at least 40% of the time it's going to get through. Because you gotta look at how often black sees play, but black often, black is very much playable as monocolored, and enjoyed by many people as monocolored, including some weird decks like Try and Run Phage the Untouchable. But it also sees a lot of play in combination with other colors. Which means if you're playing one of those kind of decks, you're not unreasonably going to have some black creatures, but you're also going to have some creatures in your decks that are not black. If you're playing Jund, let's say, you're going to have some creatures that are red, you're going to have some that are green, you're going to have some that are Gruul, and you're going to have some that just aren't black. You might have a handful of artifact creatures in there. I think this is going to get through for damage more often than it first appears if it's kicked. I think this is a better card than it first appears. Is it great? I don't think so. But I might, if I'm building Minion Tribal, I might be looking at this. I'm just not likely to put this card, I'm just not likely to put that deck in Yellow Slaves. Desperate Research. Oh, okay. Choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Reveal the top 7 cards of your library and put all of them with that name into your hand. Exile the rest. So, I name Time Twister. The one piece of power that's legal. I look at the top 7 cards. Are any of these cards Time Twister? Cool. I take any copies. Those will go to my hand. The rest from that 7 are getting exiled. If you're playing black and you're playing a deck that has multiple copies of the same card, so are you playing Relentless Rats? Are you playing what's the other one? Rat Colony. Are you playing Shadowborn Apostle? Are you playing, Slimes Against Humanity? Actually, Slimes Against Humanity, if you're playing that and you're playing black, that's going to end up being really good because Slimes Against Humanity okay, fine, slime, not slimes. Where X is 2 plus total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. So even if you end up exiling them, or they're exiled for any other reason, they still count towards the slimes. If you're building any of those kind of decks and you're running black, Desperate Research. Good card for that kind of deck. Assuming you run enough. Now, I so far have physically built one deck that has, you can run as many copies as you want. I have built Persistent Petitioners, Azorius Persistent Petitioners Advisor Mill. And I'm running 24 Persistent Petitioners. And I feel like that's enough for the deck under normal circumstances. I think if I'm running Desperate Research, I would want more than 24 copies. I don't think I need a lot more, but I might be looking at, say, 30, 35. 35 is probably enough. Desperate Research, because ideally I want to hit, say, 2 out of the top 7. I feel like Desperate Research, 35-ish copies is probably good. But yeah, if you're playing it again, if you're playing a deck where you can have a number of copies, you can also. There's also a couple of other ways to run it. The other primary way that comes to mind is if your deck cares about cards being exiled. Might be a thing that you have an interest in. Hypnotic Cloud. Never liked this card. 2 mana makes somebody discard 1 card. 6 mana makes them discard 3. I think if this was 1 mana less, it would be... No, I see why it's not 1 mana less. Oh. Hypnotic Cloud. Because comparing it to Fugue. Fugue is going to be the big comparison here. Which is this. Which is 2 black plus 3. She looks like she's had a rough day. 2 black plus 3. This, if you kick it, is 1 black plus 5. So 6 mana, but more splashable. Oh, yeah. I still don't like it, but if you want an effect like Fugue and you are light on black mana, have a note of this somewhere. But that's also assuming you're looking for discard, making somebody discard cards. You generally don't want this yourself. You have better options like Zombie Infestation to play with. So making somebody else discard cards. I mean, if that's a thing you're into, but again, as I was mentioning to, I think it was Strictly I was talking to earlier. Um, yeah, I think so. If I'm playing at a casual table, I want to be able to feel like I can play the game. And if somebody is throwing a bunch of discard effects at me, I am not likely to enjoy myself. Again, in a competitive environment, my brain has completely different thought process with respect to that. No problem with it whatsoever. Kitchen table? Nah. Nah, dude, stop. Come on, dude. Stop. Enough already, okay? But that's how my brain reacts to a situation like that. You know, uh, it, I, if somebody has done enough stuff that I feel I cannot play the game anymore, my brain's like, this isn't fun anymore. I'm done. I've actually grabbed my shit and walked out the door before. Um, but in a tournament setting, completely different reaction. It's like, oh, okay, you're making me do this. Okay, cool. Let's see if I can get around this. I think if you're going to run an effect like Hypnotic Cloud, you're running light on black mana. B, don't run a lot of this. Don't run. Like, the reason to kick this is because you want to make somebody discard a bunch of cards at once, but don't overdo it. You know, don't turn around and make somebody discard. Every turn, everyone's discarding half their hand. You're going to end up with a lot of people that just are not going to enjoy it. You know, this when you're looking at a casual group, it's like this should be fun for everyone at the table. Exotic Curse. Again, best situation, creatures, enchant creature gets -5, -5. For 3 mana, that in of itself is actually not bad. But you have to build your deck accordingly. Which means, again, you're probably playing green. So you're already playing the two, most commonly played colors. And don't tell me Golgari is not a highly played color combination. But for 3 mana, hell, for 2 mana, you can destroy target creature. You have ultimate price, destroy target, I think it's monocolored creature. You have cast down, destroy target non-legendary creature. You've got creatures or spells that let you blow up a creature and then you get pinged for how big it is. A bunch of, uh, target player sacrifices a creature effect. And at 3 mana, you're playing Murder, and Murder is even a bad version of its own ability. There's much better versions of that ability available. Uh, Exotic Curse, you are playing this if you're worried about creatures that are indestructible. Because this will, shrinking a creature down gets past indestructible. Beyond that, but at that point, most people would probably run sacrifice effects like Guest Verdict, Cruel Edict, Diabolic Edict, Accursed Centaur, I think it's called. No, Cursed Marauder, Liliana the Veil, etc., etc., etc. There's enough options at 2 and 3 mana to make somebody sack it. Innocent Blood, make everyone sack a creature. For a single black. So, probably not necessary. However, if you're playing with, if you're doing this because your deck doesn't just want to deal with indestructible creatures or whatever, but it also has an Enchantress kind of bend to it. Enchantress, Constellation, any of that sort of thing going on. Sure. Maybe I can see it there. Crypt Angel. Five mana for a 3/3 flyer with protection from white, which in and of itself is not bad, especially since it only requires a single black. That in of itself is actually pretty decent. Protection from, and the funny thing is, like especially back in the day, protection from white meant no pacifism on it, nor swords to plowshares or similar effects. And it's also black, so it's not getting hit by effects like Terror or Dark Banishing. And we didn't have Murder or a card like that specifically as of yet. So if you're playing against somebody playing black or white, they're kind of boned up against the Crypt Angel. Comes into play, return target blue or red creature card from your graveyard in your hand. Whoop. More common ability to see in black than, let's say, I don't know, in blue. But, it's a decent card. It's also an angel. In fact, you can I will bet you dollars to donuts you can build mono black angels fairly reasonably. Oof. 9? 12. Oh. Oh, this might be harder than I thought. Okay. So that means sort by mana value. 3, 3-ish. 4, 4, 4, 4. Okay, bunch at 4 and 5 with a couple of 3. Okay. So you're going to have to start the low end at Changelings. And ideally run Snow Basics. Okay, so Mono Blue Angels is buildable but not easy. You're going to have to run all of them, including Sephiroth. But yeah, 12 is not a completely unreasonable starting point. I would have thought we'd have more Black Angels by now. Oh well. Yeah. But I would build that. Mono Black Angels. Somebody wants to build that, go ahead. Hallam Jin. 6/5 with haste for 6, which should be a 4/3 for with haste for 6, which is actually not completely unreasonable. If red's the most common, which chances are it won't be, but if red's the most common, you're looking at a 6/5. Or sorry, you're looking at a 4/3 with haste. While I'm not excited to do that, I'm kind of okay with that because haste tends to be one of those abilities that often costs a bit more than other abilities, especially when you get to larger bodies. I'm kind of okay with that. I'm not saying it's good, but I think if you're doing Jin Tribal and you're running red, you might end up going, yeah, I guess I can do that. Loafing Giant. 4/6. When attack, so basically, if it tries to end up in combat with something, you mill a card, but if you mill to land, prevent all combat damage that the giant would deal. I will point out that if you're doing the, many combat phase things, many combat phases in a single turn, this is gonna turn around and go, oh look, I revealed a land. It's never gonna deal combat damage, so every combat after that, you might as well not bother attacking or blocking. This also works out to a 5/5. There's better than that now, actually. Power equal 5. Toughness equal 5. ID equal red. Mana 4. Rarity less than rare. Charging Monster Sword. That's the one I was thinking of. 5/5 trample haste for 5 mana. At uncommon. Oh. There we go. Havoc Jester. Whenever you sack a permanent, deals 1 damage to any target. Yeah, there's a couple of options. There's probably about 3 or 4 options that are reasonable. That would be better in most decks than Loafing Giant. I would probably play the Hellinger above the Loafing Giant, but that's kind of a tough call. Rage Weaver. Target black or green creature gains haste till end of turn. Again, 2 mana for a 2/1. And an ability that both those creatures would greatly appreciate. Now, green does have some ability to get haste at at a larger scale, i.e., something like a concordant crossroads, black doesn't get the ability to, mass give its creatures haste. So black is going to want that more. Although both of them get haste somewhat. But again, this is one of those, like, Rage Weaver targeting, an elf deck is not going to complain. Holy cow. Scarred Puma. 1 red for a 2/1. Can't attack or block unless a black or green creature also attacks. Can't attack unless a black or green creature also attacks. So you are looking. So it can block all day long. You just need another creature for attacking purposes. There's ways to think about that. Also, it's a cat. It's a kitty cat. And meow 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 when it meow meow meow. I'm a cat. Let me get a cat. Then I meow 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 when I meow meow meow. I wonder, what's the smallest haste creature? Let's go mana value equal 2. Alright. Sort by color. Frog Tosser Banneret. Oh, Gurmag Swiftwing. Manor Skeleton, Nether Shadow, Nether Trader. Beast Color Savant. Strangle Rootgeist. Skullbriar. Yeah, I would prefer Strangle Rootgeist personally. But yeah, kind of hard to find a. Kind of find a. Kind of. Wait. Golgari. No. ID Gruel. Or ID. Golgari. Or ID. Red, green. Black, green. Red, black. Red, black. Why can't I Rakdos? Let's see if that does anything. Oh, minus ID equal red. Oh. I did it again. Minus ID equal red. There we go. Dreadhorde Butcher. Oh, Rakdos Headliner. That's kind of cute. Yeah, yeah, okay. Because the big thing that you want is it to be at least green or black. It can be green, it can be black, it can be green-red, it can be green-black, it can be red-green, but it can't be mono-red. Oh, and it can't be... Alright, fine. Minus ID less than R? Does that bring it down to 40? No. But, that being said... Okay. Okay. There should be enough playable cards at 2 mana. There should be enough playable haste creatures at 2 mana to make Scarred Puma playable. Okay. Skittish Kavu. I don't trust Skittish Kavu to actually be a 2-2. And nowadays you can get a 2-2 at common for 2 mana with bonus abilities. No. I would play the Scarred Puma above the Skittish Kavu. It's actually more playable. Ancient Kavu, kind of hilarious that it's, 4 to cast for a 3-3. So basically a hill giant. 2, this creature becomes colorless till end of turn. Basically, 2, this has the void. We'll get past color protection and anything else that cares about the fact that it's red. Which is pretty good if you're playing Kavu Tribal or if you just want to make sure damage gets through and you don't have to worry about, color protection. Oh, the Swords of X and Y. Cool, this one gives protection from red. That's nice. I'll pay 2. This is now colorless. Enjoy. Oh, crap. Yeah. That might be more relevant than it first appeared. Rogue Kavu. 2 mana for 1-1 when it attacks alone is +2/+0 till end of turn. So, basically, under normal circumstances, only a 3-1 for 2. Only. As an attacker. However, attack triggers are an option. Attack triggers that can be copied. Is it Ishin I'm thinking of? If creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that triggers additional time. Yes. Ishin 2 Heavens as 1. This will attack as a 5-1 for 2. Now it's only when attacking, but still. Then combine that with some kind of extra turn shenanigans, or not extra turn, extra combat shenanigans. Yeah. you want cards like Rogue Kavu and a lot of cards that I would generally pass on. Ishin can make this a little on the silly side. Kavu Runner. 4 mana for a 3/3 sometimes has haste. As long as no opponent controls a white or blue creature. I think the assumption that nobody's going to have a blue creature, I think, is not unreasonable. The assumption that nobody's going to have a white creature, I think, is questionable. Assume this is a hill giant. If you're lucky, it has haste. Callous Giant. I threw together some time ago a mono red life gain / damage prevention deck. This was one of the cards in it. 6 mana for a 4/4 giant. If a source would deal 3 or less damage to this creature, prevent that damage. That means that anything that's going to hit this has to deal at least 4 damage. Hilarious if you've got something that can do, like equipment, that can prevent any amount of that damage. Yeah. If I'm playing Giants, I would play this. Oh my dog. If I'm playing Giants, you play this, and then an effect like a Chroma's Memorial actually being really relevant here, because things like protection from red. Okay, you're not burninating it, you're blocking dragons all day long. You know. Yeah, Callous Giant is just going to get dumb if the deck is built right. Kavu Aggressor. It's a 3/2 for 3 that can't block. If it was kicked, it's 7 mana for a 4/3 that can't block. No. Bad. Stop being bad, go to the corner. You do not pay 7 mana for a 4/3 that can't block. It's just no. Ruby Leech. This is basically Sapphire Leech, but in lieu of flying, it gets first strike. Red, I would say, is in between black and blue when it. Yeah, I would say it's between black and blue when it comes to wanting to spend its mana. It doesn't necessarily. It's happy enough spending it on its own turn, because that's when it's going to be dropping its dragons and stuff like that. So it's not as unhappy being able to, like, especially if you're playing with like larger spells. It's not completely unhappy to do that, but it does want to hold up some mana on somebody else's turn. It does want to hold up some mana on somebody else's turn, so it can go, hey, by the way, bolt your creature, or whatever. A lot of my spot removal is going to be sorcery speed, aftershock, lava flow, stuff of that nature. So I'm less likely to complain about Ruby Leech, but I'm not going to be happy with this, because if I'm playing a card like this, I want to be a bit more aggressive. Slimy Kavu. Target land becomes a swamp till end of turn. I will point out that a mono red deck can very much play Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, because the format hinges on color identity, which is what colors exist between its text and its mana cost. text, not counting reminder text, plus its mana cost, plus any, identifiers that specifically say, hey, by the way, this is red, or this is green, or this is, fluorescent mauve, or whatever. Take all those and add it together. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, because it's a land, has no cost. It has no symbol on it that says, hey, by the way, I am this color. It has no colored mana symbols in its text. Therefore, even though it's commonly assumed to be black, it is not actually a black card. So a mono red deck can run Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Slimy Cavu you basically play if you don't have access to that. Primarily things like I don't have the financial resources to do it, because Urborg is a little on the more expensive side. And the least expensive one I'm seeing is like $47. And goes up from there. If you can't swing that, Slimy Kavu in a pinch will work. It does affect any land, which is a thing. It's rarely a thing, but it is a thing that you can do. Let's go green. Green, 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 green. Sulam Jin. 4/4 trample for 6 mana. Not completely bad. Also, you're playing green. You're paying 6 mana. You're probably dropping it on turn 4. At that point, turn 4 getting a 4/4 trample is actually fine. This is probably the Jin that I'd be most happy to actually play. Even if green's the most common color, a 4/4 trample for 6 is serviceable. And you're playing green, you're probably getting it out turn 3 or turn 4. Barring, infinite mana shenanigans. Llanowar Vanguard. No relation to Cardfight Vanguard. 3 mana for a 1/1 Dryad. Tap to give it +0/+4 till end of turn. I tap it, it becomes a 1/5 till end of turn. So, let's do some math. As I've mentioned before, if you average the power and toughness, you should be looking at 1 mana on average for every point of, averaged power and toughness the creature has. In other words, if you've got, say, a 7/3, 7 plus 3 is 10, cut that in half is 5. So a 7/3 should start around 5 mana, and then you tweak the knobs up and down using that as your starting point. You start at 5. Llanowar Vanguard, if you add its tap ability, it becomes a 1/5. A 1/5 averages to, 1 plus 5 is 6. Cut that in half is 3. You're looking at something that averages to a 3/3 at about 3 mana. Which means this is about right. But that's also assuming we're looking at a 1/5 full time. This is not a full time 1/5. This is a 1/1 that occasionally becomes a 1/5. Now, to be fair, at that point they were going based on the assumption of a 3/3 creature being like Trained Armadon, which was 2 green plus 1. This is 1 green plus 2. Yeah. Back in the day, I would probably say it's kind of balanced. But modern times, I mean, since at least Time Spiral Block, which I believe was when we originally got Nessian Courser. Yeah. 3 mana, 3/3. This averages to a 3 mana, 3/3. But that's a 3/3 full time. This is a 1/5. Nah, not worth it these days. Wallop. 1 green, 1 other. Sorcery. Destroy target blue or black creature with flying. I'm kind of okay with the idea of playing this card. If you're having trouble finding viable options elsewhere, or if you have a specific reason for wanting to hate on blue or black. At which point, 2 mana blow up one of their flyers is fine, and hard to redirect to something else. However, in general, I would say no. I would spend an extra mana as an instant and get a card like Atrax's Fall or something of that nature. Destroy target artifact, battle, enchantment, or creature with flying. Sorry, it's not a sorcery. It's not a instant. It's a sorcery. But any creature with flying, not just a blue or black one, or an artifact, or an enchantment, or the battle, which is the new card type. Much more flexibility. The narrowness of this card can be a benefit if you're worried about people redirecting the spell elsewhere. Jade Leech. 4 mana for 5/5 that makes your green spells cost green more. Not as bad as it first appears. 4 mana for 5/5 is quite serviceable. Costing green more depends on how the deck is designed. If you're looking at something that's built along the lines of elves, that's going to be a headache. You don't want this. If it's designed with much larger creatures, with like 4 mana 6/6s and 5 mana 8/8s and whatever else. Stuff like that, spending an extra green mana is not a big deal. It'll make a bit of a difference to stuff that comes early, but anything after that, you're kind of okay because a lot of the cards you're going to be playing is kind of undercosted. So, green, the Jade Leech, this might be the best one. For frame of reference, I don't think we covered the white one. No, not androdite. What's the white one? Boop. Alabaster Leech. One white for a 1/3 that makes your white spells cost one more. I think in general I'm okay with that. It starts off as a 1/3 for a single white, which is actually pretty good. I think that one and the Jade Leech are actually really solid, depending on how the decks are designed. And you can just absorb the additional cost and not worry too much. If you're building white like a control deck, it's going to be a bit more of an issue. Although you do get, fine, your wrath effects are going to cost 5 mana, not 4. Or 6 mana, not 5. But that's usually not enough of a problem to worry about. Partly coming from the fact that you have 40 life to start off with instead of 20. And people, even if they're playing an aggro deck, aren't dropping 1 mana, 2 power creatures on turn 1 sort of thing. You generally have the first 2 turns that you can breathe, and then stuff that might concern someone at some point starts coming online realistically on turn 3 or so. So I wouldn't worry about that one too much. Might Weaver. Might Weaver. Da na na na. Da na 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 na. Might Weaver. Might Weaver. Might Weaver just might be the most important one. Red and white get some ability to have trample. Red, I think, gets more. If you're playing white, and you're running green, obviously, and you're looking for a way to get trample, Might Weaver being able to turn around and give a white creature trample to lend a turn is kind of a big deal. This is probably, between all of them, between all the Weavers, this is probably the most important one. Which is, again, kind of amusing because, Jade Leech being playable, Wallop being playable to an extent if you're concerned about redirecting, people playing redirection spells. Sulam Jin being probably the most playable Jin out of the cycle. And Might Weaver, the only one here I am not thrilled with at all is the Llanowar Vanguard. And then it starts going up from there. Blurred Mongoose. 2 mana for a 2/1 uncounterable with Shroud. To make sure this can get extra damage through, you're going to need an effect like Overrun, rather than Giant Growth or, Oh, actually, that being said, Blurred Mongoose, it has Shroud, but if you can get an aura into play without casting it, and without some kind of ability that says that it specifically targets the creature it's getting put on, then it can attach to a Blurred Mongoose. if you can flicker an aura, for example, as long as the flicker effect doesn't say that when it comes back it targets the creature, if it doesn't have that kind of wording to it, it comes back and attaches to Blurred Mongoose and goes, hey, by the way, hi. So depending on the kind of deck that you're building, playable. Kavu Chameleon. 5 mana for 4/4, uncounterable. That in of itself is actually pretty good. Then pay a green to make it become the color of your choice till end of turn. Again, a shame that it's only the color and not color combination. But it's still a decent creature. Now, granted, nowadays this might be a 5 mana 5/5, but this is still something you can work with. Especially if you're looking at like Kavu Tribal or something like this. Wandering Stream. Again, if you're doing things such that all your lands have all basic land types in some manner or other, first of all, you're already playing green. You're probably looking at a card like Dryad of the Elysian Grove, or Prismatic Omen has got a similar effect on Anora. Lands you control are every basic land type in addition to the other types. This, if you've got an effect like that out, this is pay a green, gain 10 life. Because it's basic land type, not basic land. So this will top out at gaining 10 life for 3 mana. If you're building a deck that cares about gaining life, then this is the kind of card where you want to gain a bunch of life in one chunk rather than having multiple effects that gain a small amount of life. Though, to be fair, it's not difficult to gain 7 or 8 life for like 2 mana, so this might still be a bit much, especially since it's going to require more effort to get all 5 colors online. I think you can do better. It'll be okay, but I think you can do better. Quirion Sentinel. When this creature enters, add 1 mana of any color. It's a 2 mana 2/1. It's an elf and it's a druid. And if you're playing a tribal deck for either of those, this is okay. This allows you to do something kind of cheeky and go, Quirion Sentinel, I get a green mana, I now cast Llanowar Elves. This is like the progenitor to Burning Tree Emissary. Excuse you. You know, 2 girl mana. When it enters, add 1 red plus 1 green. That, when it came out, I completely missed the boat on this. 2 girl mana comes into play, add 1 red, 1 green. I play an emissary, using that mana that from its come to play ability, I play an emissary. It comes into play, I play another emissary, get more mana, play another emissary, and then I finish off with something that costs a red or a green, or two mana that can be spent with by red green. Boom. End up with like 10, 11 power on the board on turn 2. What? Yeah. But this is the progenitor of that ability. And this would have been like, this is already really close to that. So, yeah. Are you playing elves? Are you playing druids? Take a look at this as being something that you might want / need. Although I will point out that once it's coming to play abilities gone, it's now a vanilla 2/1. But that's still, I mean, it's a 2-power creature for 2 mana. Did I actually put you in my common stack? Think. Ruh-roh. Oh no, again? Oh. Oh no. I don't like how that felt. I don't like this. Give me a moment here. Task manager. Son of a biscuit. What's going on here? Processes. Crap. There we go. Oh my lord. No idea what happened there. Okay. 2 mana. Quirion. Okay. I did not go with Quirion Sentinel, but I don't think it would be wrong to do it. I didn't do it because it was a one-shot compared to things like Druid of the Cowl, where you can get green mana every turn. But it is a come into play ability. Druid of the Cowl, you have to wait until the next turn before you can actually tap it for mana because it's a tap ability. Summoning Sickness and all that other jazz. Not an unreasonable card. Not an unreasonable card. Just, I made the choice not to. For reference, I'm looking at my commons only mono green elf deck. But it was an option I could have used. Nomadic Elf. Are you playing a deck that requires more than one color and has a healthy amount of green to it? Are you playing Black-green elves. Nomadic elf is not unreasonable. It's 2 mana for a 2/2 elf. That allows you to spend 2 mana to convert that into 1 mana of something else. Viable. Kavu Climber has been kicked to the curb at least once due to Owlbearer. Exact same cost. 4/4 trample when it enters draw a card. 3/3 no trample when it enters draw a card. Was decent enough back in the day. Has since been kicked to the curb, at least by Owlbear. However, if you're building a deck around having a bunch of creatures, like basically if you're doing a green version of my mono blue deck, of my mono blue commons deck, which is based around drawing a bunch of cards. If you're doing the mono green version of that, you might want to be playing Kavu Climber anyway, alongside Owlbear. Pincer Spider. 3 mana for 2/3 with reach is pretty good in of itself. Pay an extra 3 mana, give it a +1/+1 counter. That brings it to 6 mana for a 3/4, at which point I go, because a 2/4 has always been 4 mana. So maybe I could see a 3/4 being 5 mana. But no. They want 6, and I'm like, if I'm playing this as a 2/3 with reach for 3, which is quite playable. And the option of getting an extra counter on it, I probably wouldn't bother considering it in most games unless unless the deck is designed in such a way that I have ways to get extra +1 counters on it. A hardened scales, or as an example, that's now 2 +1 counters for 3 mana, so that makes it into a 4/5 with reach for 6. I'm kind of okay with that. 4/5 reach for 6, that feels okay. But a Pincer Spider, by default, I'm assuming this is a 3 mana 2/3 reach. And it's a perfectly fine, reasonable creature. I am curious if I actually put you. I don't think I did. No, let's go details. What have I got for spooters? Blight Willow, Dragon Lair, Giant Trapdoor, Silklash, Skyfisher. Nope. Pale Recluse. No. I don't have that for a deck somewhere currently. I figured the place I was most likely to run it would be like my 5-color, 3 tickets to the zoo please deck. It might have ended up on the short list that I had to cut through. 1, 2, no. All right. Actual multicolored cards. Urborg Drake. 3 mana for a 2/3 flyer that has to attack each combat of Fable. Honestly, not a terrible card. Yes, you get to higher rarities. This gets kicked to the curb. Are you playing Drake Tribal? I would call it playable. And beyond that, it's it's still decent considering that you'd be paying blue +2 for a 2/2 flyer. So it's fine. Charging Troll. 4 mana for 3/3 Vigilance and Regeneration. This is pretty good. This is actually pretty good. This is like, without going to stuff like Thrun the Last Troll type stuff, which now, at that point you're looking at a legendary creature. This is a non-legendary creature. Are you playing with trolls in a Selesnya deck? This is probably going in, and it's probably going to be one of your better creatures. Slinking Serpent. 4 mana for a 2/3 with Forest Walk. But not in the colors that have forests. This is a black-blue card that's unblockable if your opponent has the basic land for green. Again, you're playing black-blue, you can run. You have a Myocridlo Growth, at which point this is suddenly a 2/3 unblockable. And no drawbacks apart from the fact that to make sure it gets through, they need forests. You have a Myocridlo Growth, here you go. Done. You're also playing blue. If you want to do the silly thing, you have the ability to go, Glamour Die or whatever, change Forest Walk to Planeswalk, and wreak havoc across, your white players at that point. Cinder Shade. 3 mana for 1/1 with the typical Shade ability that you can then fling later at an opposing creature. I assume this is reasonably going to be a 3/3 creature that you can fling, at least. The later on in the game it goes, the bigger it can get. But by the time you can cast it, I assume 3 is pretty reasonable, and then fling it. Which suddenly means that you could cast it for... I don't mind this. If I'm playing Shades and I'm... If I'm playing at least Rakdos and I'm playing with Shades, it's going in. If I'm playing at least Rakdos and I'm playing with Fling effects, it might make it in. It does only hit creatures, so that is something to watch. But if I'm playing Rakdos Shades, it's going in. Plague Spores. Such a good card. My personal problem with Plague Spores, and this is very, very, very much a me problem, is its flavor text. Kind of gets to me. Kind of really gets to me and kind of ow. Which, that's saying something about flavor text on a card when it has an impact on you. Yeah. But yeah, 6 mana, 1 black and 1 red, and then 4 more. Sorcery. Destroy target non-black creature and target land. They can't be regenerated. So, target non-black creatures, so Dark Banishing, at that point, was black plus 2, I believe. Yeah, black plus 2. Oh. Was a Minotaur. So black plus 2. Stone Rain. Red plus 2. Instant plus sorcery. The cost is right. This is very close to so basically Dark Banishing as a sorcery stapled onto Stone Rain. You want effects that can hit more than one thing at a time, but specific things? Plague Spores should be on your radar. Meteor Swarm. 2 mana enchantment, pay 4 mana and discard 2 cards at random, 4 damage to any target. The biggest thing that stops this from being playable is the same thing that stops it from a lot of cards being playable, is the random discard. You have to be able to figure out how to make use of the random discard. If you can, like Meteor Storm has got a few ways to work with it. If you've got 12 mana and 3 cards in your hand and none of the cards you care about, toss. 4 to that, 4 to that, and 4 to you. You can make it work. It's not easy, but you can make it work. Reckless Assault. This should be more fun. 1 red, 1 black, 2 other enchantment. Pay 1 mana and 2 life to deal 2 damage to any target. Now, you generally want to be at a higher life total than your opponents when you do this. However, as long as you've got a reasonable amount of life left, let's say more than 15, I wouldn't be like willy-nilly, I'd be paying attention to what I'm hitting, but I'd be like, okay, that thing needs to take 6. Can I get any damage from something else? If I can get like 3 damage from something else, then I pay 3 mana and 6 life and just kill it off. You have a Liliana the Veil that's about to ultimate. If somebody gets something in for 3 damage against Liliana, I pay 3 mana and 6 life, kill it. Again, this was written before Planeswalkers were even a thought. Back when Planeswalker was still the conceptual idea of the kind of, major wizard that you portrayed when you played the game, rather than a card type. Yeah. Because it would be like another decade or thereabouts. But, this is why it says creature or player in the OG text, and now it says any target. And now that means it also hits battles. Because the Oracle text would have changed it from creature or player to any target. Because of the story about how Planeswalkers would have been affected by stuff like this, and how rules have changed this, that, whatever else. This now hits battles as a result. Which means, are you playing with battles in your deck? Are you playing Rakdos at least? Tuck this in your list somewhere. Galena's Knight. There's one of these for each allied color pair. So white blue, blue black, black red, red green, green white. And yes, I do have one. If you look at the back of a magic card, whoops, the easiest way to look at this is if you see the white dot up at the top of the circle that's in the middle of the, well, quote unquote across the hall from it, are red and black. So red and black oppose white. So the one that's red and black will have protection from white. Go around the circle for all 5 colors. Protection from red is going to be very big because red likes dealing damage. So things like chain reaction or let me pull you up for a moment. This is not the droids I'm looking for. I know what I'm looking for. Nope. Jesus Christ, Superstar. Hold on a sec here. This is... Back in a moment. Somebody who's staying over for last night and tonight and possibly longer is almost back, is on his way back. So got to make sure the door is open so they can get in. Please hold. Okay. I'm back for the time being. Was it this? No. What are you? Is it this? This. Docs. What am I looking for? This. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. So, chain reaction, starve extinction, blasphemous act. All stuff that are, if a red deck is looking for mass removal and they're not playing a color that is known for mass removal, so if you're playing red blue or red green or red blue green, then you're usually looking at a card like Chain Reaction, Starve Extinction, or Blasphemous Act to pop goes the world to all creatures, which all deal damage. And protection, in part, prevents damage from a source that's the appropriate color. Galena's Knight has protection from red. That means it can attack and not be blocked by dragons. That means goblins take a look at it and go, well, crap. Etc. You know, and a few other things. Lobotomy. Target creature reveals their hand, then you choose a card from it other than a basic land card. Search their library, graveyard, hand, and library for all cards with the same name as the chosen card and exile them. Then that player shuffles. What does that mean? For most decks, that's going to be, okay, I make you exile a specific card that's in your hand. I get to choose, but I make you exile a specific card from your hand. Against some decks, you know, your Slime Against Humanity decks and Persistent Petitioner decks and whatever, if they catch one of those infinite number of cards in your deck, they get to take all of them from your deck, from your hand, and from your graveyard. You lose all of them. And against some decks, that's going to hurt more than others. I think that might actually hurt more against Dragon's Approach than some of the other decks. Yeah. I will also point out, you choose a card other than a basic land card. You cannot take swamp, mountain, island, forest, plains, wastes, or snow-covered versions of those. But you can take any other card, including land. As long as it's not one of those. As long as it's not one of those 12. Anything else, fair game. Llanowar Knight, same idea as Galena's Knight. It's just the protection from black version. Protection from black is going to be more immune to spot removal than anything else, because any mass removal that you deal with is generally going to be either -X or outright destroyed. Better against spot removal, and again, certain creature types, demons, dragons, zombies, stuff like that. But, the protection from black, I think, is going to be more relevant for the red decks, but protection from black is probably going to come up a bit, like, you're going to play against black more often. Wings of Hope. 2 mana for an aura that is +1/+3 in flying. Pretty decent, actually, if you want an aura to help pump a Toughness Matters deck. You're playing white-blue, so you're probably playing Arcades or Prasazon or whatever it's called. Permacon? No, not Permacon. Color. Phillips are steadfast. Okay. Yeah, if you're playing white and blue, you're running Arcades the Strategist as your general. But yeah, for a deck like that, also if you've got like just enough creatures that are heavier on power than toughness, like 3/1s and 4/2s and stuff like that, and you want to make them a bit more balanced. Wings of Hope is still fine, but I would be putting this more into a deck like Arcades the Strategist. I would be doing that instead. Vicious Kavu, when it attacks, +2/+0 until end of turn. So attacks as a 4/2. Again, if you're playing something like Ishin, it can attack as a 6/2. Thankfully, it's not if it attacks alone. But it'll attack as a 6/2, which is actually really good for 3 mana. Voidalian Zombie, we've our protection from green, really popular common color. Protection from blue, you know, less common, and it also, most of the removal is bounce based. Protection from white, largely immune to Swords of Plowshares, and occasionally like humans and soldiers. Other than that, Horned Cheetah is the only other multicolored card because I want to get through the protection from cards that are in the cycle. The Horned Cheetah, 4 mana for 2/2 with triggered lifelink. I feel like this back in the day should have been like cut at least 1 mana off it. 4 mana for 2/2 with with Spirit Link is probably the better way to call it. It's just a bit much. It's not that good unless you've got ways to pump. If you need life gain and you've got cat pumping, then maybe you want to give it a try. But you should be able to find 2/2 lifelinking cats better than this. Lifelink / Spirit Link. Now, the cards that have got a gold color identity that are not actually gold cards. Commonly, it's one color and has an activated ability or kicker cost or whatever of another color. 57, going to go through the first 3 rows. Urborg Phantom. 3 mana, 3/1, can't block. Pay a blue, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and by it this turn. You basically, well, the thing is, it's combat damage, so that you're basically activating when you're going, oh, I guess the creature I'm tangling with is a bit more powerful than I wanted. Huh. That being said, depending on the color scheme that you're playing, if you're playing Sultai, you have the ability to add something like Questing Beast, which means creatures, combat damage dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. So, you activate Airborg Phantom and then combat damage that would be dealt to the Phantom would be prevented, but by the Phantom would not be. So there's going to be ways to pull that off. I never like well, let me rephrase that. I don't generally like building decks with cards that say, this creature can't block. But as far as actual gameplay is concerned, that's fine. It's fine. It's just I try to avoid cards like that, but that's another story. Llanowar Cavalry. 3 mana for 1/4, so it averages, so it's basically a 2/3-ish, which that's about right. Pay white, give it vigilance till end of turn. I'm kind of, from a cost perspective, that feels okay. I'm okay with that in terms of like balance and so forth. Playability. I don't really see a good place for this. Because like when you're looking at something that's basically a 2/3 that you can pay mana to give it vigilance. I mean, generally speaking, for an extra mana, and sometimes it's for a tweak to the cost, like green plus white plus 1 sort of idea. You end up with like a 1/4 or 2/3 or whatever with just vigilance instead of activated vigilance. So I think if I want to play a card remotely along this line, what I would rather have is something along the lines of, pay white, untap target attacking creature, or something of that nature. And that would see so much more play in so many more decks. Kind of meh on it otherwise. Glimmering Angel. 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer, which is a bit much, but you're paying a bit extra for the fact that it's got activated Shroud. I'm kind of okay with this, because this is also one of those abilities that you don't want to be using all the time. This is like, you use it in a pinch, better have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. It's an angel. If you're playing an angel deck that involves blue, this is not unreasonable to throw in. Viashino Grappler. 3 mana for a 3/1. Pay a green to give it trample till end of turn. Nowadays, I think you can just get a 3/1 trample for 3. So, ID equal red, power equals 3, toughness equal 1. Oh, trample. Skyclave Geopede. At 3 mana, I get the same thing. But that's also got a landfall trigger to play with. Yeah, you're straight up get trample instead. Son of a biscuit. I'll be right back. Okay, I apologize, people. I was not expecting it to take that long. My body decided it needed some, I don't know, some quality. I, I'll, I'll leave it to your imagination. Anyway, Vodalian Hypnotist, not completely an unreasonable card. 2 mana for 1/1 Merfolk Wizard. Okay. Pay 3 and tap it. Target player discards a card. Activate only as a sorcery. Honestly, overall, kind of a decent card. Are you playing, this is one of those cards where it's like, because it's only going to be like one card and it's going to be once in a while, it's not going to be a regular thing unless you include a bunch of other effects like this. If you've only got like a couple of these sort of things going on, I don't mind that, because it's once in a while and you have to spread it out amongst the other 3 players. I'm a little more okay with doing it that way. Plus, it's more of an investment. It's 3 mana to activate. I'm a bit more okay-ish with that. Tolarian Emissary, 3 mana for 1/2 flyer. Meh. Not too fond with that. That really should be 2 mana. I think I might have made this like 1 blue plus 1 for a 1/2 flyer, because that's basically Stormcrow. And then, if it was kicked, destroy target enchantment. White plus 1. Maybe I could see white plus 2. But yeah, this feels overcosted by at least 1 mana. So, to be fair, if you're playing white and you want to blow up enchantments, there's easier ways to blow up enchantments in white. You know what I'm saying? Benelish Heralds. This is kind of adorable. So this is 4 mana for 2/4, which is okay. Pay 4 mana and tap it. 1 blue plus 3. Tap it to draw a card. Not unreasonable. White does not get easy, consistent card draw. Not without something else attached to it. Probably the best analog I can come up with is this, which is, Skycrawler, 1 white plus 1 for a 1/1 flying lifelink, which feels about right. White plus 3, you and target opponent each draw a card. So, assuming the bodies are about right, which Benelish Herald's 3 mana for a 2/4 is about right. It's basically a 3/3. Your starting point for a 3/3 realistically is 4 mana. It should be 3, but given how easy it wasn't at that point to hit something for 4 damage, I can see it costing an extra mana. For the difficulty cost, basically. So I'm kind of okay with that there. And then blue plus 3 on a white card. So having to pay a second color. Blue plus 3 and tap to draw a card. Compared to white plus 3. You and target opponent each draw a card. Now, the tap symbol is usually worth about 2 mana in an activation cost. Give or take, it's